Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. How are we all doing, gang? It seems that summer has officially arrived in my back garden and I have a pink face to prove it. But I am busy preparing to cheer my team, Derby County, in the playoff final on Monday with a place in the Premier League at stake. So wherever you listen in the world, please, I ask you to cheer them on as well. But on today's show, I want to talk to the guys at Avanan, which is a security provider for business email and collaboration, and delve into the tips drawn from its recent Global Phish Report, where the findings were based on Avanan's study of 55.5 million emails. Now, Gil Friedrich, he's the CEO, and he was last on the show way back in 2016 on episode 116. So I think we've got a fair amount of catching up to do. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to New York so we can speak with Gil Friedrich, CEO at Avanan. So a massive warm welcome back to the show, Gil. We last spoke in September 2016. I think it was on episode 116. We're now on episode 860. So can you remind the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. And sort of funny that you mentioned this because in 2016, Avanan was also around its 100 paying customer, and we're now about to cross our 1,000 customer this quarter. So I guess our growth rates are somewhat aligned. So real quick, our sort of previous baby was a company called Forescout, and in those 3 years, they did their IPO in NASDAQ, so a little more known than at the time. We started Avanan at late 2014 with this notion that we were going out with this great technology that Forescout had, and customers came back and said, I love the technology, but I'm moving to the cloud, my email, my collaboration platforms, etc. The needs were pretty much the same. We needed to protect from hackers, we needed to protect from data leakage, but the legacy technologies were just not serving well those new environments. So literally that's what we started, and that's the promise we started with as a company.
It's fantastic to hear you doing so well. It seems like our journeys are parallel with each other, but you've beat me to 1,000, so maybe I'll have to race you to 2,000. How does that sound? Now, for people just tuning in, Avanan secures all of your cloud applications with multi-layer security from best-of-breed vendors, and also enables users to manage it all from one easy-to-use dashboard. Now, after we've had nearly 1 million listeners since our last conversation, can you tell everyone about the kind of problems that it is that you solve for your customers with Avanan?
Sure. So we help customers secure their SaaS environments. When we break that down, 75% of our customers choose to secure either Office 365 or G Suite, so sort of the main collaboration suites in the enterprise environment. And then even within that, I think the key use case is about anti-phishing, anti-malware within those environments. What's unique to us in this environment is that, to install us, it's basically 100% API. All you need to do, you need to approve our app within the, let's say Office 365 marketplace. You do this once and the entire organization is secured. So it makes it very easy to install compared to your traditional email security gateway, etc. But also the traditional email security gateways, they don't have the visibility we get through API. We see things like who's logging in, where they're coming from. We see internal email traffic just as we would see any other email traffic, just the entire end user activity, etc. Something the more, the legacy email security gateways just couldn't see. They were focused just on, incoming email, SMTP protocol only, etc. And then within the API, what's unique to us is that, and this is one of our pending patents, is that even though it's 100% API, just to prove the app within the cloud app store, we know to be fully in line. In other words, before the email ever reaches an end user, it gets cleared by whatever security stack you choose. And obviously for real security, real protection, being in line and scanning before the potential of a harm, that's key. So, we solve one of the biggest problems in security, and we're not saying this. This is, Verizon recent breach report and reports from Gartner, etc., with a solution that provides better security and is easier to activate and use. This combination is really what's driving our growth. And so, last month was our record with 51 new contracts, and this month we're going to break that record, etc. That's sort of the trend we're on and the problem we solve for customers.
And I'm glad you mentioned phishing there and the problems around it, because I think it was a recent Avanan study of 55.5 million emails, which was the Global Phish Report. I mean, what did you learn from that study? And are there any tips from that report that you can share with us today?
Sure. So, it's a pretty comprehensive report.
Yeah.
I'll try to put it in a few words, but first, Office 365 is the most targeted by far. Hackers are around credential harvesting. That's been a big issue. It's somewhat in decline when more and more companies move to MFA. So I think MFA, multi-factor authentication, if you're in Office 365, I would almost say is a must for you as a company. Definitely a very important security layer. Number 2 and 3 there were, spear phishing attacks, mostly around, fake invoicing and trying to monetize through fake payments or fake requests for payment. And then malware leading to ransomware and extortion was also up there. So these were sort of the three main attack vectors. What we also learned, which was interesting, is that hackers spend their life finding obfuscation methods to basically bypass Office 365. And our researchers spent a lot of time on those. When you look at the details, they're always pretty funny, or I would say, I hate to say this about hackers, but ingenious in a way, where they would use fonts of zero size to bypass natural language analysis, or they'll play with the way they present links so that the Office 365 doesn't even know it's a link. And these methods, they bypass both the default security and what Microsoft calls advanced threat protection, ATP. So they spend a lot of time on this. Part of what our research found is that the legacy email security solutions, email security gateways, are also vulnerable in some cases to these attacks. And in all honesty, in some cases, we were vulnerable as well. So we were not parsing those emails like others as we should have. I think what's unique to us is that when we see these attacks, we don't just make sure that we parse the email properly, but we use those as indicators of attack. We call it indication of phishing within the email, and that feeds our AI algorithm to detect phishing. So in some way, we sort of self-incriminate the hackers as they use those more sophisticated methods to say, hey, there's an attack here, and we flag those messages. I think because of this unique approach to phishing, we're able to find the things that everyone else misses, and the Global Phish Report was a way for us to share some of this knowledge with the world.
And I also read in the report that one of the biggest culprits is the cloud, which provides more vectors for hackers and also gives them broader access to critical data when a phishing attack is successful. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and the kind of motivations that they're going through there?
Yeah, it's funny that it looks like hackers also move to the cloud. So it's not just the enterprise. There's definitely more attacks with email in the cloud. We're not the only ones that's saying this. Microsoft released a report recently on attacks on their infrastructure. The Verizon breach report I mentioned, Gartner, etc. I think we can only speculate why it happens. What exactly with this move to Office 365 made life easier for attackers, but part of it is just the popularity of Office 365. It's almost like everyone is using it. I think I read somewhere 83% of enterprises use Office 365. So it just makes it, a very lucrative target for hackers. They spend their days looking for ways to bypass Office 365. And then, part of the advantage of the cloud is that the hackers just, very cheaply can get their own environment spun up very quickly and then start looking for tricks to bypass it. In some cases, use the platform to send malicious email out. So use it as the way to attack out. Definitely helps the hackers to have their hands on the technology they're trying to bypass. The fact that with the cloud, you only need the credentials. So, if you're able to guess it because there's a weak password somewhere or credentials harvesting, etc., that's all you need. There's no VPN and no other layers that we used to have when email was on-prem. And then just the ability, you find one compromised account and you can spread that across the organization. It leads to many more. So the fact it's just log in and then from login spread across the organization is big. And then finally, I think it's the fact that it's not just email. So, most customers purchase from whether it's Microsoft or Google the entire suite. The company is using the entire suite, OneDrive, Google Drive, SharePoint, etc. And hackers use it. They send, innocent looking but malicious files to one another, or just emails that look as if they're coming from a legitimate OneDrive account, etc. They use the entire platform, the entire collaboration platform, as a way to attack the organization. So, for those reasons, there's probably more, but definitely for those reasons, we think we just see more attacks on the cloud infrastructure.
And just sticking with Office 365 just for a moment, there's a breathtaking stat in there, which I think is a quarter of phishing emails will bypass Office 365 security. Is that right? Because that's phenomenal if it is.
I mean, it was one of our most interesting findings as well. And it's the default security, but it's even with your ATP, the Advanced Threat Protection, that is missing a lot of bad stuff. I think it's a little bit, we call it the antibiotics phenomena, where, you have bacteria, some of it the antibiotics will kill, but at the end of the day, you'll only see the bacteria that's immune to the default security or the default cure. So when hackers finally find a way, they don't start spreading their email if Microsoft knows how to block it. They start the attack only after confirming it's going to bypass Office 365. Otherwise, they don't spend their time. And then the cat and mouse game really is how quickly would Microsoft see that there's an attack and block it. And as soon as they block it, the hackers just, stop sending. They see this pretty quickly, they stop sending, and then they move to the next attack method. So for these reasons, basically, we say 25. It could be that Microsoft blocks 99.9%, but, there's a very low velocity for the 0.01%. For the 99.9 they block. Once hackers find a way in, that's when they start more massive campaigns and continue with them until they get blocked, then move on. So that's why I think it happens. I think it's an inherent problem with any default security that, there's just no way around.
And phishing techniques are getting increasingly sophisticated now, and you did give a few examples a few moments ago. But I'm curious, how are your customers educating their staff on the dangers of clicking links, downloading rogue files, etc.? Because I know from my IT past, it was this education piece that is possibly the most difficult. And I'm just kind of interested in how other companies are tackling this.
So, there are many solutions there for training your employees, protecting from phishing, and especially most large organizations would have a training program. In many cases, it's part of their regulation and compliance requirements to have an employee training program. I think at least reading the Verizon breach report, it seems like it's helping, meaning it is decreasing click rates. And maybe the end users are learning to trust less the emails. Maybe it's the training program, hard to say. But Verizon did report, I think, that from something like about 20% plus click rate, it went down to about 5% click rate. But I also speculate that 5% is probably as far as education will take us. First, because the even the most educated end user falls victim to the recent more sophisticated hacking methods. And we've seen attacks where one company buys another, and hackers immediately use that to spread email to the potential customers of the purchased company to say, "Hey, we just moved, now we're this, and here's our new bank account." And during that transition, there's a time gap to basically, I guess, leverage the confusion within the potential customers and so on. So a lot of these emails, just from a timing perspective and format, etc., just look very, very authentic to the end user. And this is, I think, where the problem is. So this is the sort of 5% that go beyond training, and literally there's not much you can do with your end users to overcome them. So training is obviously very important, and moving from 20% to 5% is very important. But we also think the technology, the security layer is needed there to protect from those more sophisticated attacks.
And since we last spoke, you've secured $25 million to accelerate your cloud business. So can you tell me more about this and ultimately how that funding is going to help move you guys even further forward?
Yeah, so with the growing customer base, we've seen need for growth in several areas. Absolutely support in R&D so that we can continue to innovate and be in front of this problem, and growing our infrastructure, making sure it's highly available, etc. That required more R&D resources, specifically in areas of cloud development, and everything we do is AWS based. So we've made a lot of investment there, and then the obvious thing is better spreading the word, so more sales, more marketing, etc.
So why do you think Avanan has been so successful in this niche, especially where so many others have failed before you?
First, I guess niche depends how you define niche, right?
Yeah.
Office 365 alone has 140 million mailboxes. As I said, 83% of enterprises. It's competitive out there, so there are several multi-billion-dollar market value companies that we compete with, and I think all of us are doing well. I mean, those that are public, I read the report, and it seems like they're doing well as well. So it seems like hackers keep all of us pretty busy, and it's a huge problem. I think really the secret behind our success is that, besides being a huge problem, is that the legacy solutions just don't solve it well. And, we have a unique technology in how we deploy and how we detect those attacks that gives us a unique edge. So at the end, we are inspired to be another significant player in this market.
So what's next for you guys then? Is there anything else you can share with us about that road ahead and your vision for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So, sort of a recap, but we're in a great position to reinvent email security, and it needs reinvention because of all the reasons I mentioned. Customers move their infrastructure to the cloud. The default security is not enough. Whatever Microsoft and Google provide, the legacy solutions, they lack visibility and just miss too much. And then it's not just email. It's no longer just email. Communication, collaboration is basically an entire suite now. So for these reasons, there needs a change. And, Gartner, other analyst firms sort of reinforce our approach of, API is the future to secure those environments. So obviously with the large problem and the technology, we believe we can become a dominant player in this market.
Fantastic. Well, before I let you go, can I just ask that you remind the listeners of where they can find you guys online, find out more information about everything that you're doing, or even ask a member of your team a question if they are left with any questions that they would like to discuss with you guys?
For sure. Everyone's welcome to just go to avanan.com, avanan.com. And specifically, if you're interested in the attacks we detect and report, you can go to avanan.com/attacks. And just register to our attack briefings from there.
And I love how you said a few moments ago that your mission is actually to reinvent email security, because it needs it. And it really does, because like you said, those legacy solutions are not fit for a digital age where everything is in the cloud now rather than in-house data center. And there is going to be needed some significant changes along the way. So I wish you the best of luck on this future and your path forward. But more than anything, I'll see you at 2000 and we'll get you back on. But thanks for coming on and joining me.
My pleasure, and thanks for having us. It's been great.
Wow, the fact that a quarter of phishing emails actually bypass Office 365 security completely blew my mind. And a big thank you for Gil for coming on to the show. And a big thank you to Gil for coming on the show today and sharing some of those insights. But I mean, I've got to ask, was there anything in that report that surprised you? You know the drill by now. Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. And remember, all the guests of every single episode now, as we race towards 1,000 shows, can all be found on my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. But that's it for today, I'm afraid. Another week has flown by, and I've finally caught up to ensure that we have one episode in May. Thanks for bearing with me, and I appreciate each and every one of you more than you know. So apologies that I've had to double up this week a little bit to catch up. But the good news is normal service will resume next week. So a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.